Hello, my name is Raymond Karchevsky, and this is coming to you from my home here in Cave Junction, Oregon. Tonight's talk is titled Spiritual Mirror of Truth and the American People. My comments are in response to a Texan named Eric, who's got life all bass-ackward, as many of you listening to me do. He said to me, "The things you have done are very wrong. If there is a hell, you will be in the deepest parts. You are a very bad man. If you lived in Texas, you would be dead. Any man that has done the things you have done to your family is not much of a man. The best thing you can do is put a bullet in your own rotten head." My response to Eric is thus. Eric, you're not the first to come unglued by foolishly standing before the mirror of truth that is Christ consciousness, nor will you be the last. The sadness that I experience is for the millions of mind-controlled blind believers who have been conditioned to worship graven images while they shun and avoid the living truth. My simple message is, and always has been, that living awareness is divine, while reliance upon dead intellectual dominance over one's life is satanic. What better proof can be offered of my indisputable message of sovereignty and freedom to the government-harassed, beleaguered American people, and to the rest of the world, than the absolute freedom that I now experience, that of a simple man of truth, a Christ, and a sovereign, one who was threatened by the state of Oregon and Josephine County with 35 years in prison for having the audacity to exercise his unalienable right to liberty, which includes the right to travel on public roadways without first seeking permission, licensing from government, and for paper terrorism for my filing of UCC liens upon judges, district attorneys, and sheriffs in the attempt to hold them personally responsible for their actions. Well, 2 days before the first of 2 trials, I was offered a plea bargain which would reduce the sentence to time served while awaiting trial, along with 2 years probation. Let's see, 35 years in prison to 0. What to do? What to do? Well, I knew better. I was not going to voluntarily contract my way into the system by consenting to such a contract offer, which would hang over my head like a shroud for the rest of my life. So I rejected the offer. Why? Because I committed no crimes, nor as a man of the sovereign people was I even subject to the jurisdiction of the phony de facto corporation, now masquerading as government, and its courts. For I follow God's law, do no harm. Satanic law is for the slavery-conditioned dummies, not the spiritually enlightened. I stood sui juris, that is, standing in my own jurisdiction, as a sovereign. I went through 2 kangaroo court trials, unable to shake the court-imposed lawyers upon me, who unlawfully spoke for me in my absence, and without my permission. That's how they railroad thousands of wards of the court. But I persevered anyway. The result? The government created fictional entity, the straw man, the juristic person on the criminal complaint, whose name resembled mine, but was spelled in all capital letters, was convicted in both trials. But the courts, operating on presumption that I, the living, breathing man, was somehow linked to the fictional court government-created entity as a surety for the debts of the defendant. In more than 20+ court appearances and 2 trials, I demanded the judges of the fictional court prove jurisdiction over this living, breathing, flesh and blood, sentient, natural man, which they refused to do so, and have not done so to this very day, some 9 years later. When time for sentencing arrived, I refused to accept their offer of sentencing on the basis they had not proven jurisdiction. What did the corrupt court of Josephine County, Oregon, do? They threw me out of jail, not in jail. To this day, I, this living, breathing, flesh and blood, sentient natural man, have no charges hanging over my head, and I challenge anyone in this world to prove otherwise. It's all fiction, all satanic theater, and billions of people throughout the world are a captive audience to such fraud. The showdown between God's law and its protection, and man's law and its satanic conditioned tyranny, finally answered the question of the superiority of God's law over man's law, once and for all. It was clear, direct, immediate, inarguable, and indisputable. Yet millions of computer-using, onlooking, ignorant Americans continue to remain blind and bound to the hypnotic spell breaking outcome of my 2 cases, which bear enormous consequences to the freedom and quality of their own lives. These unaware, dutiful, but robotic individuals are the living dead and the spiritually blind. They have lived their entire lives throughout millennia, and still quiver in fear at the images their satanically conditioned intellects torture them with when they think of or look at their own government and its enforcers. It is regrettable, to say the least, that a satanically conditioned populace prefers to live a life in service to the enslavement of satanic images while rejecting the living truth of a simple, living, breathing, flesh and blood, sentient natural man who understands and lives, sees, and speaks truth. In other words, he resonates with Christ consciousness. Eric, you are just one man, but you are symptomatic of a satanically ruled society, As such, you and every one of your like-minded ignoramuses got it all bass-ackward. Hell, isn't it?